Welcome ladies and gentlemen, Tactical Lich here. Today we are beginning a best of 5 series in round 7 of the BBB Season 1 tournament. On the green side we have Azrael of Astora and on the red side Lenorm. Now, apologies to Azrael, I'm going to rant about this Ogre army for quite a bit. Now, most of the army build is fine. A front line of Nobblers backed up by Ogre Bulls with dual weapons can effectively pummel the Dark Elf light armored front line. On the flank, we have some Nobbler Trappers backed up by more Nobbler Trappers and a couple Saber-Tusk packs. Now, the Saber-Tusk packs number is less than optimal. I prefer to have 4 of them on every single battle, but that is fine. A Slaughtermaster is leading the army and then an Iron Blaster is pounding the Dark Elf infantry. Now for the problem of this Ogre army, the cavalry department. First of all, the Mournfang cavalry with great weapons simply is not a good choice because they are not a great unit in general. But that is a more established opinion, so I would not be talking about it much. The real focus of this video isn't about the Mournfang, but about a more highly praised Ogre unit, the skystriders. Now you might ask, Tactical Lich, skystriders is one of the best units on the Ogre roster, why are you hating on them? I don't hate the unit, they are absolutely amazing, but I think people are over-reliant on these guys. On paper, their stat line looks amazing with impressive weapon strength, armor-piercing, anti-large, heavy armor, and also a solid melee stats. You see players bring them all the time in most matchups, but against the Dark Elves, it is a horrible idea. The Crushers rely heavily on their armor for protection. Their large size and hitbox makes them more vulnerable to enemy missile fire since they're easier to hit, and even with their missile resistance, it is only at 20%, which means most of the armor-piercing damage will still go through. They also need their armor to protect them when they're surrounded by enemy units. But the problem is Dark Elves have a ton of armor piercing in both melee and ranged. As you can see here, Koa Knights, Dark Shards, and of course, don't forget about the Cheese Runner Chariots. They all do armor piercing, especially Koa Knights, and the Cheese Runners have anti-large at the same time. There's also other units not on the field right now, including Shades, Dark Riders with Repeater Crossbows, Reaper Bolt Throwers, and also Blackguards of Nagaron. And don't forget about all the armor-piercing lords, including Malekith here, who has great armor-piercing weapon strength, and more importantly, Soul Stealer, a spell that ignores armor and directly drain away enemies' health. Now the skystriders are trying to approach the Dark Shards through an opening. As soon as the Koa Knights turn around, all juiced up by murderous prowess, they're forced to turn back and now taking massive crossfire damage from all the Dark Shards, Cheese Runner Chariots, and they themselves not doing much in return, only 131 gold worth of damage value and at the same time being chased away by Koa Knights. There's simply no good conditions for these skystriders to engage in this battle so far with all the armor piercing on the Dark Elf roster. Things aren't great for the rest of the Ogre army either. Ogre Bulls also fighting through more Koa Knights and also shot up pretty bad by some of the Dark Shards throughout the game. As you can see here, Ogre Bulls charged into Dread Spears and shot up, and they just simply do not have a good time. Iron Blaster trying its best to shoot away at the enemy Cheese Runners, but they're struggling to do damage. Their killing power comes from their penetration and splash damage, so against Chariots, it is not a great use of the artillery. Now the skystriders try to go back into the fight, but then after a shower of dark shots, armor-piercing bolts, they're backing off once more. There are still too many Koa Knights in the area, and the skystriders will take heavy casualties if they try to fight through them. The skystriders can definitely wreck the remaining Koa Knights, but the Cheese Runners and Dark Shots crossfire will make sure they pay a heavy price for the victory. As a result, the skystriders were forced to stay back the entire game because they will be threatened by all those armor piercing as soon as they approach the front line. The only mobility that can threaten the Cheese Runners are now basically gone, picked off by the Koa Knight. There are still some Ogre Bulls regrouping on the far side, but unfortunately things are looking very grim for the Ogre Kingdoms. Even if the skystriders charge in right now and manage to give Malekith a proper beating, they'll still get shot to pieces by all those Dark Shards and Cheese Runner Chariots. And with Malekith wrecking the Slaughtermaster, the Ogre Kingdoms decided it is time to admit defeat. In the post-battle screen, we can see that the skystriders really didn't do much here, as they were pressured away by all those Dark Elf armor piercing every time they try to get into melee combat. The rest of the Ogre Kingdom's army trade poorly against all those anti-large units, the Koa Knights and the Dread Spears, so the Saber-Tusk packs were having limited damage. Same goes for the Mournfang cavalry and all the Ogre Bulls as well. Nobblers being Nobblers, they are basically cannon fodder and not much to talk about for them. The only notable unit that did some damage in this game for the Ogre Kingdoms is the Iron Blaster, but still not enough to recover its cost, just not enough to carry the game, while the Slaughtermaster had really limited damage as well. Dark Elves, the Koa Knights trade well into all the Ogre units, while the Scourge Runner Chariots, having limited value, but they were just skirmishing and shooting at whatever target they can find, probably could use a better targeting priority. The Dark Shards, this one got 1,200 gold worth of damage value, definitely have been shooting at the skystriders for quite a bit of time. While the other one got ran down by Ogre units, so unfortunately not much damage for them. Dread Spears did alright overall, they held the Nobblers and pushed back the Ogre Bulls, while Malakiv not really doing much here other than using the Terror to break away all those Saber Tusks and Ogre Bulls. Now let us move on to the army selection screen to talk about the unit picks in this matchup a little bit more. In an Ogre Kingdoms versus Dark Elf matchup, I would not take the skystriders because you're paying way too much for their armor. Instead, I'll be taking the Man-Eaters with great weapons. At first glance, it seems that the Man-Eaters with great weapons have much worse stat lines compared to the skystriders, but that is because they only cost 1,400 gold while skystriders costing 2,100 gold. And on top of that, the Man-Eaters have more HP in total, more unit models, so they sustain better in prolonged melee fights with their better stat lines at 42 melee defense and 40 melee attack. Now, it doesn't seem much, but if you look at other monstrous infantry of the same class, Dragon Ogres, only 32 attack and 40 defense. Greenskins, Stone Trolls have 36 melee attack and 32 melee defense. Even Cornered Minotaurs with their meta status only has 36 attack and 30 defense. So as a whole, the Man-Eaters is a very solid package of anti-large armor piercing damage with great stat and solid weapon damage. At 26 bonus versus slush, they can reach up to 66 melee attack against large targets. That's more than enough to punish any Dragon Lords and heavy cavalry, including Cold One Knights. Plus, you're not paying extra for armor that would not be useful against the Dark Elves. When compared to regular Crushers, you can see that their stats are not bad at all, with significantly more melee defense allowing them to hold longer in prolonged combat, and more importantly, they have solid leadership and will hold even in the most dire situation. Crushers only have 70 leadership baseline while Man-Eaters have 80, and on top of that they have one unit trait that no other Ogres units possess, immune to psychology. Ogres are not known for their leadership, and even the skystriders when their HP gets low would be prone to terror routes, but not the Man-Eaters. These guys will hold their ground in the most dire scenario, using their mass to pin down enemy monsters and cavalry and beat them back with their armor-piercing anti-large. And with the cheaper cost, you can save up some funds to invest on other units like ranged firepower, with the lead belchers that can threaten a lot of the Dark Elf missile units, for example Chiefs Runners or the Dark Shards, or even Raven Heralds if your opponent decided to bring a flying missile unit and assume that you cannot contest airspace without flyers. The Man-Eaters are just an overlooked unit overall, especially the Great Weapon variant with a solid anti-large armor-piercing profile. They can trade great against other monsters and cavalry. If you think that the stats are just not enough, then you can juice it even further by Bull Gorger. At only 4 Winds of Magic, you get 24 more melee attack and 25% more armor-piercing weapon damage, which suits them even better because they are indeed specialized in armor-piercing damage. On top of that, they have smaller unit models compared to Crushers, so that gives them an edge in surrounding smaller targets. More models of them can come into contact with the target, and more damage can be dished out. Skystriders, because of how big their models are, would struggle to come into contact with mounted or foot characters. For example, if Malus Darkblade is on the battlefield, the Skystriders would struggle to surround him with only 3 or 4 models because of their size. But Man-Eaters being Ogre infantry without any Rhinoxes involved, more of them can surround Malus at the same time. Anyways, that's my 2 cents for the Ogre Kingdoms versus Dark Elf matchup. GG to Azrael and Le Gnome, and I'll be posting more of their Best of 5 series in the future. Be sure to subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you in the next one. Tactical Lich, signing out.